What is going on, guys? Welcome to The Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today I'm going to go over my least favorite books from my top 10 authors. Now, for those of you that missed it, I went over my top 10 favorite authors of all time, and I will have that linked somewhere right here. So if you missed it, go back and watch it, check it out, or you can just hang out here and you'll find out who my top 10 were. So I'm going to go over the worst books, in my opinion, that these authors put out. And so without any further ado, let's start with number 10, which was Patrick Rothfuss. And so for Patrick Rothfuss, my least favorite thing that he has done is The Narrow Road Between Desires. So this is his most recent novella that he put out. I actually think he put it out either sometime last year or early this year. I can't remember. I think it was late last year. And it is an edited version of something that he had already released. So this is a novella of Bast and some background from this character. And man, I hated this novella. I mean, I genuinely detested it. I got maybe a third of the way through it and realized like, wow, this is just like a weird, disgusting, sexually explicit. It almost seemed like Rothfuss was just living out some of his weird, gross, sexually explicit fantasies. Yeah, it was just gross. There was a lot of like same-sex stuff in here. It was just, it was just disgusting. So I was like, yeah, you know what? This isn't for me. This stinks. Just genuinely, and it doesn't pertain to the story whatsoever. So yeah, this one was not only a DNF, but this was a time to return to Amazon. It was terrible in my opinion. So my number 9 author was Ryan Cahill, and my least favorite piece of work from Ryan Cahill has been The Ice. So this is another novella, and for those of you that don't know, Ryan Cahill writes a novella that goes in between each of his full-length novels, which I have right here, and The Ice was the backstory of some of our main characters and sort of how they got the dragon egg that comes up in the first book. It was one of those stories that had been talked kind of around the entire time, but we never really found out what was going on. And so then finally when Ryan was talking about, I'm finally going to tell that story. I have it for you guys. And I read it and it was really underwhelming. It wasn't bad. I just thought it was unnecessary, especially because we had so much of the context already from the other novels that I was kind of bored. Yeah, he did some cool world building stuff in there, but otherwise, yeah, I just kind of felt like the story itself was not necessary. So it was fine. I think I gave it like 3 out of 5, but I think he maybe could have just woven some of that stuff into the story of the actual novels, and we probably could have done without that, especially since he's writing, 1,500 page books. I think he probably could have fit it in there somewhere. Okay, so number 8 is going to be John Gwynne. And my least favorite book that I've read from John Gwynne is going to be The Fury of the Gods. Yeah, The Fury of the Gods just did not land for me. I know that there were some circumstances surrounding that book in particular. I had a good time with a lot of it, and it was still a good book. It just kind of fell flat at the end for me. I was really hoping for something a little more epic, especially when you see those covers and you've got those giant monsters. You almost like you wanted to see that giant monster showdown, and I'm not saying that you didn't, and I also don't want to get into spoilers, but it was just sort of like, I was kind of bored. I think maybe he could have trimmed it down, but yeah, I was kind of bored, and I was just sort of waiting in between the fight scenes. So yeah, Fury of the Gods, definitely my least favorite of the trilogy that I've read of his, but it still wasn't bad. So, I mean, if nothing else, there's that. It was still a good book. It just, for me, wasn't up to standard with the other two. Okay, so number 7 was Brian Jacques, who wrote the Redwall series, and my least favorite book that I've read from him has been Mossflower. This may surprise some people that have read the Redwall series, because Mossflower is like supposed to be book number 1. You have Mossflower and then Redwall and then so on and so forth. But Mossflower is sort of that story of the entire world. It really gives you a backstory of what is going on, of the different factions with the different animals and that kind of stuff. And this one, I was just kind of bored.
I'm beginning to see a pattern here that I'm not so sure if I like.
I actually reread it because I had read it back in like 6th grade or something like that. So I was 12 years old, maybe 11, 12 years old, and was just kind of bored. I read it because it was book 1. And so I reread it just a couple of years ago, and yeah, it was like, this is fine. This was definitely like a decent book, but it was not my favorite. And you can see as the story progresses with each book that his writing gets a lot better and his storytelling becomes a lot more compelling than it was in book one. So, I mean, at least if nothing else, with it being book one, he really didn't have anywhere to go but up, in my opinion. So my number 6 author was James Islington, and the thing that I like the least from him has been The Echoes of Things to Come. Yeah, this one was not my favorite. It wasn't bad, but it was just a setup book for book 3. Now, I get that. Okay, I understand. And there's the term middle book syndrome is a term for a reason. But it definitely suffered from that middle book syndrome. It was a little bit long in the tooth, but on top of that, yeah, you are doing some of that character building, some of that development and stuff, but it really seemed like, okay, we're going to build up and build up and build up for this climax at the end of book 2 that's going to then launch us into book 3, which is going to tie everything up. And obviously you would assume that book 3 is going to be the most explosive, the most emotional and impactful book, but you do still want that conclusion in book 2. And while it's there, I found it lacking. I found it, it seemed more like he was writing book 3 in one, like it probably would have worked better if it would have just been 2 books, in my opinion, because book 2 just seemed to sort of drag on. He really starts going into depth on the magic and how things are working. And I won't get into that just for the sake of spoilers, but yeah, book 2, I think was quite a bit of a dip for me. And so I just sort of lost interest in it, which is why I haven't continued it. I do plan to finish it, but I want to start back over with book 1 next year. But yeah, book 2 just sort of fell flat. So my number 5 author was Larry Correia, and my least favorite book that I read from him so far has been Monster Hunter International. Book 1 in his most popular series. Now that's saying something because I had an excellent time with this book. The Monster Hunter series is a ton of fun. So I've read those 3 books. I have read book 1 in the Academy of Outcasts series. I've read his graphic novel in the American Paladin series that he's getting started. And so I plan to jump into more. But book 1, I believe I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I think I gave it like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I may have given it higher. I genuinely can't remember. But it's just a ton of fun. And so if that's the worst thing that I've read from him and I thought it was great, that's saying something. I really, really, really enjoy the Monster Hunter series. And not just that, but really all of the books that I've read from Larry so far. He's a fantastic author. But book 1 was definitely a book 1. Book 2 had some of the bigger moments for me. And book 3 had even more introspection as far as the characters go. So I was definitely seeing improvements with each book in the Monster Hunter series. And I've seen even more progress with some of the more recent works. So yeah, while book 1 maybe my least favorite book from one of my favorite authors, it's still fantastic. So my number 4 author was Jim Butcher. And my least favorite work that I've read from Jim Butcher is Death Masks. Now, I think this is book like maybe 4 or 5, something like that. I think it's maybe book 5 in the Dresden Files. And there's a few reasons why this is my least favorite. The first and foremost reason is that there is a very graphic scene in that book. It's at the tail end of a chapter, so I was thankfully able to just skip it. But yeah, it was, to me, I thought it was not just excessive, it was just kind of like, it was just gross. Come on, man, you didn't have to put that in there. So I really had a hard time with that. And on top of that, you're dealing with some biblical themes here, and I tend to be very cautious when it comes to people kind of playing around with biblical themes. For me personally, I know how easily influenced I can be based off of works of fiction. And so I don't want those lines of reality and fiction to be blurred. And so when you're talking about the Shroud of Turin and those kind of things, and then you're sort of playing with that, while I think it's a neat concept, I just think that it can be dangerous at times. It just makes me wonder, like, what isn't off limits? And while he never crossed that line of being blasphemous or sacrilegious or irreverent, it sort of gave me pause. So this book in particular is my least favorite, mainly for those 2 reasons. The first being the primary one, because I just think it was unnecessary. So it was definitely my least favorite in the series. And I don't know that I would be able to go back to it. So my number 3 author was Christopher Rocchio, and to no one's surprise at all, my least favorite book from him has been Empire of Silence. Yeah. If you guys want to know how I struggled and wrestled with that book, I will post that video somewhere right here. Yeah, it was a trudge to the finish line on that book. And it's not because it was a bad book or that it was poorly written. There's just some content issues that I had there. And again, I'm not going to get into all that here. I went into all that in this video up here. So definitely my least favorite. And I think it's a general consensus across the board that book 1 is definitely his weakest book. So my number 2 author was J.K. Rowling. And for my least favorite book of hers that I've read, it's going to be, without a doubt, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Now, I know that this was co-authored and things, and this is actually a script for a Broadway play and things like that. Man, this was an atrocity to the Harry Potter franchise. It was so bad. It was so terrible. Absolutely hated it. But I don't want to just trash on it too bad, because I do get that she wasn't the sole creator there. And so I'm going to say, like, if we're not counting that my other book that's my least favorite of hers that I've read is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. This is book 5 in the series. This was my least favorite by far. I was pretty bored. I just didn't like the whole prophecy thing. I didn't think it was necessary. It didn't really make a lot of sense. The whole section where they're in the Ministry of Magic and they're actively looking for like the physical prophecy, like in the little glass orb thing, I thought was kind of stupid. Like, if I'm just being upfront with you guys, I was like, why is that so important? And why is it so important if he hears it or if somebody else does? And it was never really explained. Like, I'm not saying that she didn't give an explanation. She did. She gave an explanation of why it was so important. I just don't think it was a good one. I don't think it was a good enough one for you to base an entire book on that one plot line. Like, I was much more interested in the order itself and in that group of people and fighting the Death Eaters and things. Like, that was way more of a compelling story. That was why I continued on. And obviously your character development with Harry and Sirius Black and all the other side characters and stuff, that part, the sort of the beginnings of the war, man, like, absolutely love that. But the whole prophecy thing, I could have done without. I just did not enjoy that at all. I've heard from some people that they think the Order of the Phoenix is their favorite, but for me, it's definitely not my favorite. And so when I go to reread it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to fly through this one so I can get to book 6 pretty quickly. But yeah, again, it's not a bad book. It's still, one of my favorite book series of all time. It's just definitely my least favorite in the series. And my number 1 author, to nobody's surprise, was J.R.R. Tolkien. And my least favorite book from Tolkien is The Two Towers. What? Now, I know some people are like flipping tables. One of my friends, Tyler, is probably about to send me an angry text when he sees this. But I did not care for The Two Towers book. And and it's not that I guess that's probably too strong, but it was definitely my least favorite of the 3. And the reason is because of the way that it was written, the structure of book 2. I was not a fan. For anybody that hasn't read the books but has seen the movies, book 1 definitely follows a lot more like the movie, like Fellowship. So the movie and the book do line up a lot more. But book 2, for those of you that have seen the movies, we know that Sam and Frodo sort of go off on their own type of adventure, and then you have the rest of the Fellowship are chasing after Merry and Pippin and trying to rescue them from Saruman. In the movie, those two things are woven together the whole time. You have a little bit of Sam and Frodo here, you have a little bit of Aragorn, and a little bit of Merry and Pippin, and so on. And so you're seeing the story progress linearly for everyone. The problem for me with the books is that is not how it's structured, is that the book is structured in halves. And in the first half, I believe, I may get this backwards, that in the first half, you are just dealing with Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli chasing after Merry and Pippin. And then the second half of the book, you're only dealing with Sam and Frodo. Now, again, I may have that flip-flopped, but what I'm saying is, in that one half of the book, you're only talking about Sam and Frodo, and the other characters aren't mentioned at all. Not really. Not as far as their story goes. And then it's vice versa in the other half of the book. And so, the movies, in my opinion, did a much better job of showing us where they were progressively and relatively through the story. So I much prefer that style of going, okay, where, like, at this time frame, okay, Aragorn is here, with Legolas and Gimli, and this stuff's going on with Helm's Deep. But like, what's going on with Sam and Frodo? Because we just don't even hear from them. Like, are they dead? Have they like, we don't know. And then all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, well, let's go over here and talk about, okay, so Sam and Frodo had left and they were walking through the woods through that whole time. And now here we go. And that to me was a big miss. So I still love the book. Don't get me wrong. I just don't love the structure of the book. And so personally, it's my least favorite that I've read from Tolkien so far. So guys, those are my least favorite books from my top 10 authors. Let me know down below what yours are. I'm super interested. I would love to hear some hot takes down below. Those are always fun. So yeah, leave me a comment down below. What are some of your least favorite books from some of your favorite authors? Or what are some of your least favorite books from these authors that I listed? Yeah, I'd love to have some dialogue back and forth on some of these, because it's always fun to see people be a little more critical of some of these books, because a lot of times they can be a lot of fun to discuss. So thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you have a great week, and I will see you on the next one.